Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of Business podcast. I'm Roy. Of course, we are the podcast that we bring guests from all disciplines to try to help our entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and small businesses. A lot of times there are new and exciting things out there, and sometimes we just have things that we want to try to solve, and we don't know where to turn. So hopefully we've had a guest on that can help you, or we will have a guest on in the near future. If not, please reach out to me. I'd be glad to, kind of target some guests based on some issues that the listeners are having. But today, we are fortunate enough to have Jan Cavelle. Jan is an entrepreneur from the UK who has decades of running micro and small businesses behind her. She is very familiar with the challenges that go with that, having started one from the kitchen table when her children were small and she was a single mother, to go on to build that into a multi-million turnover business. She has known success, winning regional and national awards, and known failures too, including ending up burning out. Jan regrouped, decided to follow her childhood ambition to write. She has pulled together a book aimed at helping entrepreneurs to grow their businesses during the big leap of 1 to 10 million. The book is called Scale for Success and is being published by Bloomsbury. The UK publishing date is the 4th of February 2021, but it is available now for pre-order from Amazon and other good bookstores. And you can also find details at her website at www.jancavelle.co.uk. Of course, we will publish all that in the show notes as well. But Jan, welcome to the show and thanks for being here.
Roy, thank you. And I have to say, that's one of the best introductions that anybody's ever done. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Well, I'm afraid I didn't hit all the high points, but we got the good ones. And, you know, um, uh, when we first met, what really interested me about you was the scaling for success, not only your history, where you've been, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but it's so important to think about how we scale. And I talk to a lot of businesses, and that's where they run into kind of that gap is, started it in my garage, or I had this hobby. Had a trade craft that was good at. I ended up just, buying a truck and servicing, but never really gave much thought to how we kind of move past, you referenced the 1 to 10 million, but sometimes even past that, first, second, third employee. So, but before we get all into that, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your story and how you got here and, leading up to writing the book?
Wow. Yeah, I will too. I will attempt to do that, Roy.
Okay.
As you rightly said, I have had a lot of micro businesses, and then I found myself as a single mom and thought it's time to kick on a bit, and I'd better take it more seriously. And partly out of intent and partly by chance, I ended up scaling a business really because I did want to take it more seriously and grow more better. But I really didn't know what I was doing. But I was selling furniture to interior designers.
Okay.
Because selling was something I could do from home while I looked after children, and I was buying it in and selling it. And then I started having a friend who finished it for me because I couldn't get it finished anywhere sufficiently well in the corner of a barn. And so that was okay. And then that got a bit busy. So I got a small farm unit. And by pure chance again, the people who were making the furniture, the owner decided to retire in a hurry. I mean, literally overnight, one Friday afternoon, he knocked on my door and said, "I'm stopping."
Oh,
And
wow.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, talk about crazy. And I said, you'd better come in and have a little chat about this. And so I fed him tea and said, calm down a second. I rather need an income, and I've got people waiting for this furniture. And he said, I
Right.
don't care. And I said, well, I do. And so we had several words over several cups of tea. And the long short of it was that I agreed that he could retire that weekend and I would pay him on Never Never for his business. So I ended up with a making bit as well.
Wow.
And it was literally as sudden as that. I mean, within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So it took me a little while to digest this fact that I then had two tiny businesses
Yeah.
at a fairly long drive between them, and my kids' school the opposite direction. And the whole thing was clearly a nice idea, but pretty impractical. So I thought we'd better get a proper unit. And the only thing I could find was this rather overlarge factory. But I thought, well, that's okay. It's in the right place geographically, and so I signed a lease. And then, of course, I didn't know anything about factories. I'd never had a factory in my life. So
Yeah.
it cost a fortune to kit out. And I was in so much trouble just to pay off the debt. I had to really, really start scaling.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into scaling, by
Okay.
pure
Okay.
disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. And, as we talked in our brief conversation that we had a few days ago, I think that was one thing that you did bring out was uh, obviously you were thrust into this with your situation. And that is not the way I like to end my weeks, with somebody laying that one on me on Friday afternoon. But that, you need to make sure that this is really what you want. And I'm talking about scaling. If you're a one-man show, you have to think about everything that goes with scaling and make sure that you really, really want that. You're not doing it just because you think it's the thing that needs to be done, or everybody else is doing it.
Absolutely. And there is this huge thing, I mean, which I think is even worse because entrepreneurship's got sort of fashionable.
Right, right,
And, everybody thinks big is good, and big isn't necessarily good
right.
at all. I mean, I know I shouldn't say that. I've written a book about scaling, but it isn't. You can have a really good business that suits you, it suits your lifestyle, it may be
Mhm.
bringing you a good income, and it would be totally wrong to scale it. Why spoil it?
Right, right.
It's right for some people and some businesses, and it's really important that people make that distinction. You're quite right.
Yeah, yeah, because and we'll take your example. The furniture building part is
Mm,
that I may be a good craftsman and can build a really nice piece of furniture, but all of a sudden, if I've got employees I have to manage, I've got multiple equipment, maybe multiple locations, I've got the books, taxes. I mean, you get all of this other stuff that multiplies when you increase or when you scale, and you really have to be ready for that. You have to plan for it too. I mean, because that is where I see, and you talked about burnout, and that's where I see a lot of people get burned out. They love what they do, or they love what they did, they don't necessarily love that business end of it.
that's very true. I mean, I actually stayed loving that business for a very long time after that,
Yeah,
but it did get to that pitch eventually.
yeah,
And
yeah.
when you fall out of love with a business, you ought to get out.
Right, right.
Um, Keeping going is as stupid as growing for growing's sake.
Right. Well, and that's why that's exactly why I started this show, is because, just talking to people that somehow they had fallen into a business, and then it grew. Some of them had very good fortune and it grew. And then they had all the complications that go with that. And so, bringing on guests like yourself to try to help solve these problems, that's really the genesis of this show. I mean, I'm selfish in the fact that I get to learn from all of my awesome guests as well. But, it's a real thing. And so you have to think about that. And, I think one thing that you've mentioned too before is that, so what we need to do is surround ourselves with a good support team, mentors, and advisors. And let me preface that. I'll let you say it, but let me preface it by, that's not your mother. I mean, my mother is a good business person, but
Yeah,
she might not, she may not be as blunt and as truthful as what I would need her to be in business decisions. So I think we have to find people that we trust, that we respect their opinion too.
Yeah, it's a real challenge actually to
Yeah,
find,
yeah,
but particularly now because the market's so overcrowded with support systems for entrepreneurs. I mean, you only have to
right.
breathe to get 64 proposals from a business coach, and
Right, right,
it's really, really hard to
right.
find the right support system. And with respect to business coaches who, and there are some very good ones out there, I think more entrepreneurs I've spoken to have got more help from other entrepreneurs or people who
Right.
started in the same time as them and can actually, which is where I ended up getting support from,
Yeah,
actually people who are going through the same thing or had gone through the same thing. I think
yeah,
finding people to talk to in your sector who have, identified the problems, be it manufacturing, for example,
yeah.
manufacturing has a few problems that are special to it.
Right,
And, only manufacturing people would understand that.
right, right.
But that's the same with every sector.
Yeah.
And again, your mum wouldn't understand unless she'd been in the same sector.
Right, exactly. Well, and I think in the past we've always felt like a board was for bigger, larger companies, and I think that as entrepreneurship or solopreneurs, smaller businesses have really um, become the norm now, that we are understanding that we do need those advisors surrounding us, and it's we can have more than one. We just have to have a team that we trust. And I
Yeah,
know some guys that they are in like businesses, and they go eat breakfast once a month and they talk about things
that's
alone.
invaluable.
Oh my gosh, yeah, because it's like, one guy was saying he had an employee issue, and another one said, hey, I just had that same thing, and these are
Yeah,
some things I learned
exactly.
from that. So, yeah, it can be invaluable to surround yourself with, others from the industry. And, sometimes we want to hoard uh, our industry or our knowledge or our business from others. But you know what? Most of the time there's room for success for more than one company
Yeah,
in an area. So we shouldn't necessarily worry that if me and Jan are competitors, that we can't both be successful if we were, kind of talking about things. I mean, you have to be careful on the collusion side and not price setting. And, I'm not talking about illegal stuff. I'm just talking about the business processes that we could survive in the same market and both be successful, but be able to talk about those things.
I think that's true. I mean, I think there are, inevitably one or two people who are sharp and would take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, on the whole, people are straight and they're willing to help you and looking to you for help and want to work together
Right.
for the, mutual good. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. And I think we don't draw the line at just other entrepreneurs, but I think it's also important to surround ourselves with other professionals, uh, CPAs, lawyers,
Yeah.
payroll people if we get that big, because it's, and I use this as an example quite a bit, that, I'm a finance guy as well. And that's what I spend a lot of time in. And I could do my own taxes every year, but I don't. I take them to a
Mm,
lady, been doing them for years. She's a professional. She does that for a living. And so what it does, it allows her, she stays on top of these, they get these tax advisories or bulletins that come out all through the year. So she's got this accumulated knowledge through the year that I'm not going to be able to sit down on January the 2nd and think, okay, I've got to catch up on all the changes for this last year and feel like I could do a good job. And so, again, it's just I think it's a justification that we need to choose experts in our field, just the way that we want people to choose us to work for them as experts in our field.
I absolutely agree. I mean, the good experts, as you rightly say, go on, PD courses and keep up to date with the latest legislation. I mean, I don't know what it's like in the States, but I mean, the HR
Oh my gosh.
legislation over here changes quicker
Yeah.
than you can breathe, and
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
way you as a business owner could keep
Yeah.
up with it.
Yeah. Well, and with this pandemic, I think it's
Indeed.
made everything even
Yeah.
shakier. The HR side, the
The health
tax
and safety.
side, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because there's going to be a lot of exceptions and a lot of different things. And
Yeah.
I don't want to get into this too deep, but they did.
No.
I was hearing this morning they are in the states are saying that the question is now, can your employer force you to get this vaccination that's just come
I
out?
got the
So
same email this
it
morning.
yes,
It's
so
going
that's
on
going to
here
be a
too.
huge debate going forward
Yep.
if you can and people can get exceptions anyway. That's just going to be, again, it's one of these things that we would need to seek guidance from somebody
You
that
would
has that.
indeed.
Yeah,
You'd need to surround
yeah.
yourself with experts on that one.
So once we kind of get our team in place, I guess we also want them to have the right mindset. If we do want to grow and we want to scale, we need to surround ourselves with a team that kind of has not they don't have to have that vision, but they can understand it and not hold us back as well.
Yeah, I mean, as in team of employees as such, or people who work for you who have shares or whatever. Yeah, very much so. And it's that one, I think, that comes up. Of the more people I speak to, the more business owners I speak to, that's the one that's for make or break. That's the one that drives people to jump off cliffs or to celebrate.
Yeah.
It's so hard to get that right team.
Right.
To as you say, to get them to buy in to some extent,
Yeah.
and to be capable of growing with the business. You
Right.
can have people who've been there from the start and they're great, and they're, for example, good craftsmen or something, but it doesn't mean to say that they're going to end up running a multi-million-pound corporation. They ain't got it in them, and they have
Right.
no
Right.
wish to either.
Right. Right.
So that changeover is really hard, really hard.
Yeah, that's an example of when I was younger. I worked for a major corporation here, and the way that we chose our management were, if you'd been there the longest, or if they came
Yeah.
out to some people and said, "Hey, we're looking for a manager. Does anybody in here want it?" And then
Yeah.
that just because somebody we'll take the furniture example. Just because I'm an awesome craftsman and I can build a great piece of furniture, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be a good manager over
No,
people who are
I
building
know.
furniture. So there's a lot of predictive tests out there, too. I think that's careful that we probably add that in, is that, if you want to bring these people along in a corporation, make sure that they are suitable for that job, not just that they have a craft skill set to do the end job, but to make sure that they can manage people.
And they have to want to too. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
craftsmen, for example, actually have no interest. They love what they do. They don't want to
Right.
go and do something else and be a manager. They
Right.
want to make furniture or whatever.
Right. So the other thing too, I think that we want to take into consideration is systemization, and along with that can be delegation. I know some things that you've spoke about before are, we don't have to do it all. So we have to learn to delegate, and we have to systemize when we can.
Yeah, very much so. We have to let go of baby. But it's interesting. I mean, I can't remember if I mentioned it to you. There's a fairly new book out called Systemology. And the author argues that actually, I mean, he's right about this is for sure, that most entrepreneurs can't stand the idea of doing systems. And
Yeah.
so they don't do it. They vaguely know they should do it, but they don't
Right.
do it.
Right.
And he argues that actually, therefore, they are the most atrocious people to do the systemization. They just need to map out the best customer journey once, and then find out who loves doing systems in their business,
Right.
and leave it to them, which makes a lot of sense to me. If I thought I could do that, I'd
Right.
have got much better systems.
Yeah. Well, we don't think. I don't think we realize in our day-to-day activities of the little things that we do. Um, so if you were to come and sit in my chair for a day, I could tell you the big stuff, but there are a lot of little bitty
Yeah.
things that I do. And so, when we talk about systemization, is the very first thing is to write it down have a document that says this is the process and the procedure. So number one, we can always be changing it and making it better, but also too,
Sure.
if we have to have somebody new come in that seat, we can tell them exactly what, not just, I don't know, Joe did something and it just made it happen. We don't know what the magic was. So be sure and get that magic on paper.
Absolutely, because people have their own lives, and however wonderful they are and devoted to the company they are, there may come a time when they have to leave in a hurry. And if you've relied on them because they're so brilliant and you've never written it down, you're going to be absolutely stuck. And
Right.
it stops
Right.
you growing as well. The
Yeah.
moment you can write it down, you can duplicate.
Right. Yeah. And I think it also gives us the chance to improve on it. If we really don't
That
know
too.
what is going on, it's hard to improve that. Where if it's written down, we could see step 1, 2, 3, maybe we need to add something in there. So
Yeah.
very important documentation. And, again, it lets us nurture that talent. We can show somebody the job description and say, this is what you're going to do. They may be like, not for me. Yeah.
It certainly isn't for me.
Yeah. So, in delegation, I think that's another thing. This is my baby. I've done everything. It's hard. I am not going to say that it's something that's easy to do, but that's where we get back to hiring good people, having
Yeah.
processes and procedures in place. But we've got to be able to turn some authority over to other people.
Absolutely. You have to let go of that baby and not micromanage.
Yeah.
Micromanage is the quickest killer to their enthusiasm going. They feel undervalued,
Right.
untrusted, and unenthused,
Right. Yeah, because we kill that enthusiasm that
Mm.
if you're always telling me this is the way and no, 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 well, when I have a good idea, I'm just going to say like, you know what, I'm not doing that anymore because it's just too much of a headache. And so,
Yeah,
sometimes we're going to have good ideas, sometimes we're going to have bad, but we need to nurture that from our employees if we want to grow and scale.
couldn't agree more, Roy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess the next, last, and biggest thing is we need to have an end game.
Yeah, and so many people don't,
Right.
myself included. I never had one. I remember sitting in my office saying, oh, they'll have to drag me out of here. I love what I do,
Right.
But and those people who sort of take that approach of I'll just go on doing it because I love it, and they're the people who just say I haven't got time to think about it. I'm going to think about it, but I've got a unit. I'll have to wait till next month, and of course next month never comes.
Right.
But the problem with that is that it's a bit like your favorite employee who has something going on in their personal life. You don't know when life's going to hit you and
Right.
make you think, I am too tired of this all of a sudden, or have a personal crisis or a health crisis, or just, for whatever reason, want out. Life throws us curved balls.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got that business into a state that you might be able to sell it,
Yes.
all those years will be wasted and you'll be unable to go off and do whatever you want to do
Yeah.
and get no benefit from it. And you
Yeah.
might even be lumbered with the damn thing and not be able to get out of it either.
Yeah. Yeah. Two things come to mind is like you said, that something happens and once the business starts going downhill, then
That too.
nobody wants to buy it because
Yeah.
it's in a shambles, number one, or you're going to sell it at a discounted rate. But the other thing I think I can speak to from experience is the solopreneurs or the smaller businesses where it's built around one person,
Yeah.
and they don't think that if you don't nurture your other talent to come up, then what I've seen is at the end of time, or at when it's time for the end game, that all the value is actually in the person
Yeah.
that is leaving. And so it's like another company is not going to want to come in and pay anything because there's no value there. The value is the person who's leaving.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is a really usual one. And I mean, I remember as I started to grow, I mean, there was somebody who wanted to, come in with me or buy the business of me. And he said to me, all values with you, if you want to leave, forget it, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And it did, it made me think twice and, realize that that's exactly that. You have to make the business run without you. You can't be the business.
Yeah. And you have to, there has to be, you have to put your other people out in front of clients so they know somebody else exists at that business and not just, think it's you. And it's sad because a lot of solopreneurs, professionals, they're in their practice, and then when they get to the end, they can't extract any value out of the practice, for themselves in retirement, which that's kind of what they've always thought is, I'm going to have this as my nest egg. And then unfortunately, it's just not.
So many people fall into that one. I mean, even people with quite big businesses, but, because they're unprepared and still they may have 20, 30 staff, but it still relies all on them, and there's no nest egg. It's awful.
Right. Exactly. Well, Jan, we appreciate you coming on. I usually don't harass my guests, but I was going to say your accent sounds like that is a deep East Texas accent.
Oh dear, I know nobody has ever said that one to me before.
Right?
East Texas, right? Okay.
So you're originally from Australia, is that correct?
No, my son is in Australia.
Oh, okay.
We're sort of pretty polyglot because my grandmother was from Boston. So I don't know if it's her accent you're picking up sort of on a throwback, but yeah, Boston rather than Texas. And my father was a Scot, so
okay.
And my son is now Australian.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, tell everybody, kind of tell them a little bit about the book coming out. But if somebody else wants to get with you, on trying to scale, how can they reach out and get a hold of you?
Yeah, please do. I mean, I am very open to somebody who wants to send me an email, get in touch through the website. If you've got an issue, I can't promise you I'll help, but I promise you I'll try. And just leap on that website at which Roy kindly is going to put in the notes, cavelle.co.uk, and I'll see what I can do.
Okay, great. Well, again, one thing I failed to ask you there too was, so what is a tool that you use in your daily life? It can be personal or professional. It's a tool, a habit, a ritual, but something that you do every day that you just couldn't do without.
I mean, now, of course, like so many people on a practical basis, it's Zoom.
Right.
Here we are on it right now.
Right.
So that's become pretty indispensable because in talking to people for research for my book, in what I do now, everything is Zoom.
Yeah, nope, I understand. And it's I think it's been good to keep us connected. I don't feel, I'm very fortunate. I don't feel isolated. I get to talk to awesome people like you every day, but it's been a way to stay connected. We did our Thanksgiving this year over Zoom. Both of mine and my girlfriend's parents are both elderly. My mom would kill me if she heard me call her elderly, but they are around that 80s, and we just couldn't take a chance. So Zoom has been a blessing in a lot of ways, getting through this pandemic.
I agree. I wouldn't be without it. It's wonderful.
Right. All right. Well, thanks again for taking time out of your day to be with us. We certainly appreciate it. Again, you can find us at www.thebusinessofbusiness podcast. We're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We will be posting. We're also on all the major podcast platforms: iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and a couple more of the big ones that we've just gotten on. If we're not on the something that you listen to, please reach out. We'd be glad to submit it for them. But please share and give us any feedback that you may have. And you can also find a recording of this video on YouTube. All right, Jan, until next time, take care of yourself, okay?